Alright, here we are again on the back suspension. As you can see, there's no lower control arm in here at all. I took that and put it in the front of the car. So, went and built two more, so I'll get over to the bench and we'll show you what the new ones look like. Alright, and here they are, pretty much the same as last time. I did make a few changes just in the design of it. I got a little lazy and didn't bother with putting the holes in it. I did add the structural plates here because I was afraid of the track bar where it bolts in actually ripping through, so I wanted to add some more material to this, so that was my way of doing that. And on the front half, I did shorten up the actual face of this because a little bit of this was protruding into where the rotor would contact, so I removed that also. Other than that, they are the same, and the next thing I need to do is get these ball joints pressed into the slot that I have made. So the next thing I'm going to do is get both of these pressed in, and then we'll have to paint it and we can move on. Alright, last left off trying to make or looking at options for toe adjustment lengths for the back end of this thing. Now this being the Toyota one, and there's no way to make this work. Also there's a length difference. Mostly that length difference is the old Toyota knuckle used to come out and turn backwards and meet this. That was also a flaw because that made this radius of this short toe arm very short, which threw off the adjustments of the toe every time the suspension moved. So this really isn't going to work totally. I wound up going back to the junkyard and getting the tie rod ends that go off the front of the Boxster S, and just to see if the taper on these fit. And lo and behold, it does. And then that winds up looking like it should match where I need it to go. And I can also make some adjustments on the end links, the sway bar, and still make that work. So let's get back to the bench, the workbench, and we'll see what we're going to do in between that space there. Alright, so here's what we're working with. This is the tie rod end that originally was on the Porsche, the front of it. This is the taper that I need to fit those knuckles. And this thread that we need to worry about is M14 by 1.5. So I went and got an M14 rod, and that fits me right in here. And that settles that section, so that gets me from the knuckle to the car. Now I need this section to still fit the car. However, I'd have to flip the threads because this currently has the left-hand thread and this has a right-hand thread. So the next thing I have to do is slice off the left-hand thread from here, because we switched that between the two, weld the left-hand thread onto this end, and I'll be able to put the buckle in the middle of it. The other thing I wanted to mention is I thought this was just a rubber grommet that went through here. It turns out it's actually a Heim joint. So you can remove these rubber boots with a little coil spring, and then that's when I looked in there and see it's all solid, so it won't be a problem to weld up. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. This is the together version of it. So we have upside down to the knuckle, and this will meet my frame. And I also have this off-centered. You see it's not in the center of the joint because I didn't want it going to the car at an angle, so this will be perpendicular to the subframe. It's also important to mention the length difference between the two. I did previously shorten this to fit because my subframe did come out a little further, and I removed 2 inches from here. However, you can see the overall difference between the new setup and the old one. This is going to have an extremely short radius and cause toe in and out every time the suspension moves. And every time this longer arm moves, it'd be less toe in and out. And there is a 5-inch difference. Well, you consider I already cut 2 off. I'm still having a 3-inch longer toe arm, which has been the big concern with these MR2s in the snap oversteer. I guess now we can get back to the car and bolt this on there. All right, another situation I gotta address on the rear suspension and brakes on this thing is the parking brake cable. This is the Porsche parking brake cable, which I was going to try and use initially, but it's just too short actually. And I thought about making some extensions. That would just take me too much time. So my next option is, before I go ahead and make it a complete custom cable, let's take this Porsche one out of here, and then we'll see how different the Toyota one is to try and fit to this. So we'll get this apart and see what we can do with it. Alright, so this is what I wound up with. The parking brake cable gets fed through this tube and connects to the actual mechanism that opens the shoes apart. And this is the Porsche brake cable. You can see it's very narrow at the end and just fits through there. The problem I had was when I compared this to the Toyota one, the Toyota end was about twice the size of that. My resolution to this problem was to cut off where that goes. See where I moved it? This is now trash, the Porsche one I don't need. And what I wound up doing was doing the same to this is the Toyota cable. I cut the very fat end off the end of this Toyota cable and I welded on the Porsche tab. And as you can see, that fits in there. The other thing I had to worry about was fitting this through. Would have liked it to fit a little better, but it is kind of a press fit and should work. So the only thing I have to do now is put the brakes back together, do the same for the other cable, and I'll be able to hook up parking brake as well. Alright, here it is. Everything's finally bolted in the car. I have the left and right drive axle now in here. I have the modified toe arm I had to figure out in here. I still have the original sway bar that I modified in here and the same end links that you really can't see because of how dark it is. So what I'm going to show you now is the suspension travel and how the angle of this changes. Alright, so when we measure the angle of the output shaft, it gives me, which you probably can't see, I have about 6 degrees of positive camber, which we don't want, but the reason we're getting that is because the suspension is at full sag. So I'm going to compress the suspension. Alright, still fully compressed from the other side so we can see better. There you go, you see that's giving me 0. Alright. You can see fifth where we got the 6 degrees. So that evens out nicely.